There's been a growing interest in potato production here in Zimbabwe, where the majority of farmers are deciding to look into potato production. However, there is a knowledge gap that at times farmers do not know where to obtain their seeds, chemicals, fertilizers, or even the technical support to ensure that the venture that they are investing into is viable, and at the end of the season they are making a living off of potato production. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, in support of Vision 2030. We are in Shamba today, where we are looking at potato production, commercial potato production, where Betty Stewart here is the farmer and is going to be taking us through the various processes, strategies, nitty-gritties of how he is maintaining and sustaining his potato production venture. Barry, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, what's nice.
Barry, in terms of land preparation for potato production, we have ridges here. Could you talk to us in terms of the implements that you used? What were you looking to achieve in terms of maybe the height from the working surface up to where you would say that this is a good ridge, we can now start our planting process?
Sure, what's nice. So just one step back. So we had a cover crop prior to these potatoes, which we used an inline disc, which we call a terra disc, to incorporate that into the soil. Thereafter we put a chisel plow.
Okay.
After that, it's for the potatoes imperative that you have no compaction. You need a softer growing environment as possible for the potatoes so that they've got space and room to produce big tubers.
Okay, looking at the soils, you spoke of the soil being loose, being well drained. What kind of soils are we standing in today, or whether you would want to say the kind of soils that support profitable potato production?
Sure, so where we are, it's a very sandy soil, more sandy than a sandy loam actually.
Okay.
The advantage of that, we planted this crop in the beginning of February, so there was a lot of rain around at the time, but being sandy, it works for us. But to answer your question, really the soil is just a growing medium, so you can produce good potatoes, whether it's sand, heavy red soils. You can make both of them work.
Looking at your variety selection, what is the name of the variety of your potato establishment? What are the attributes or the characteristics that are desirable to you, where you'd say, I trust this variety? And maybe just highlighting and emphasizing on the importance for our Zimbabwean farmers to get seed from reputable sources. But sometimes people end up being shortchanged, getting table potatoes, saying it can be used as seed. They are all the same. Could you talk to us in terms of investing in proper seed, potato seed, and also the variety that you established?
Absolutely, what's nice. So with potato production, the seed choice is probably your most important choice, most important decision you make all season. So where we're currently standing, it's a variety called Mondeo.
Okay.
Which is a high yielding potato, and we target yield as our sort of main KPIs, is trying to get a high yield as possible. So Mondeo definitely ticks that box. It's also a very good eating potato. But choosing the seed is very important. So we primarily get our seed through a company called Kura Seed House.
Oh, okay.
Which has always supplied us good seed, but we also go through a company called Elite Seed House. So this field which we're standing in, it's a 20 hectare pivot. This half of the pivot is Mondeo, the other half is a variety called Foxy.
Okay.
Both very good varieties, high yielding. It's probably your most expensive input is your seed. So very, very important that you get the right variety.
Looking at plant population, aligning it to maybe the spacing, in-row spacing, inter-row spacing from one ridge to the next, how many meters or centimeters were you targeting? From one potato seed to the next, how many centimeters were you targeting?
So quite a complicated question, what's nice. So our ridges are at 90 centimeters, but our population comes down to seed size.
Okay.
So we get a split of potato seed from a 400 count, which is quite small, right up to a 180 count, which is quite big.
Okay.
So our population generally ranges from about 25,000 plants a hectare to about 45,000 plants a hectare, depending on seed size. So it's not so much the tuber seed population per hectare. What we try and target is the amount of stems a hectare. So a big seed will produce more haulms or stems compared to a small seed. And if we're in the region of sort of 100 to 120,000 stems or haulms a hectare, we're happy with that.
I understand that the haulms then lead to the number of tubers that can come out from one seed. Could you talk to us in terms of maybe how many tubers, how many potatoes can come out from one plant?
So again, it depends on how many haulms you get per station or per tuber. Generally what we find, the bigger the seed, the more haulms you get, and the more potatoes you get from that seed. Whereas the smaller seed, you'll get less haulms and less potatoes. So from the big seed being that sort of 180 count, which I actually prefer, we expect to get about 20 to 25 tubers per plant.
Okay.
But the smaller seed where you're getting less haulms, we're happy with around 10, 12.
Okay.
And that's why we target a haulm per hectare population as opposed to seeds per hectare, so that we get a good split of number of tubers, but also a good percentage of large and mediums, because that's what obviously fetches a higher price in the market.
Okay. Looking at water application, today you are irrigating. Behind us there is a center pivot which is already irrigating. Roughly how many millimeters of water do you target per given period? Do you also equate it to maybe the heat units? The more hot it is, the more water you apply, and also issues surrounding water logging. At times farmers are struggling with how to match the water requirements. At times they end up having places where water is logged, thereby becoming a breeding environment for infestation of insect pests or even diseases. What is your technique, or what is your expected amount of water per given period, per week, per day? What are you targeting?
Sure. Now, so we do use moisture probes which help us make those decisions, to take a bit of the guesswork. But as a rule of thumb, you generally want the potatoes growing in moisture, not in water. So definitely too much water can create problems. Too little water, also huge problems. But I'd say we're generally around 40 to 45 mils a week, depending on the weather at the time.
Okay. As we close this segment, Barry, would you say there is a direct relationship between the number of tubers, aside from the variety, the number of tubers or the size of tubers that you get? Would you say there is a direct relationship with the nutrition or the soil type? What normally would you say enhances productivity when it comes to having big tubers or a lot of tubers? Is it nutrition? Is it water application? Is it a village of factors? What are those? Would you educate our Zimbabwean farmers in terms of that?
It's definitely a village of factors, what's nice. So I think first and foremost, you've got to get the right seed. I think a lot of farmers in Zimbabwe that plant very small seed, because I think there's a conception that you're able to plant more. We find bigger tubers, bigger seed gets bigger potatoes and a bigger yield. Okay. Which I think is quite important. Obviously the nutrition needs to be right. It's a fine balance as well. Too much fertilizer creates problems with pests and diseases, and the final quality of the potato is affected if you over fertilize it. So definitely, the nutrition is very, very important to get that balance right. And then, like I said, with the irrigation and the moisture, potatoes want to grow in moisture, not in water, and they can't be too dry. So again, a huge balance.
There you had it, viewers. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, potato farmers and aspiring potato farmers. Today we are coming to you from Shamba. I am joined by Barry Stewart, a seasoned potato producer here in Zimbabwe. Now we are here in the second segment of your program. Viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with me, the producer, Wadzanai Manyore, so 0772807506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Make a follow-up on this episode and more, and leave your comments and suggestions. They are most welcome to us. Our YouTube channel is Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also now available on X, formerly known as Twitter. It's at Agribusiness110. On LinkedIn, we have a growing, thriving community where most of our discussions do take place. Our LinkedIn profile is at Wadzanai Manyore. Barry, we are here in the second segment. Welcome back.
Thanks, Wadzanai.
There is an interesting issue, Barry, that arose off camera when we were discussing the issue of flowering.
Yes.
At times, our farmers end up having palpitations, feeling that they've been shortchanged. When they produce their potatoes, they get to the vegetative stage, but there are no flowers inside, no flowers at all up until senescence. What could be the main cause of that? Encourage those who are watching today.
So now we grow our potatoes, our planting start in February and end in September. What we found over the years is that the flowering is directly related to temperature.
Oh, okay.
So in the summer months, you'll get a huge amount of flowering. In the winter months, you get no flowering.
Okay.
So right in the beginning when we started, we based quite a lot of our decision making on the flowering stage of the crop, which we no longer do because, like I said, it's completely linked to temperature.
Okay. I did speak about the shelf life of our potatoes. I understand that in tomatoes, at times, wholesalers or those who purchase in huge amounts end up avoiding certain farmers because their tomatoes do not have a longer shelf life when it comes to marketing. Do we have the same scenario in potatoes whereby you would say too much use of ammonium nitrate reduces the shelf life? And just your sentiments, your advice, your observations throughout the years of potato production, what could cause a shorter shelf life, or what could you incorporate as a farmer to ensure that your potatoes have a longer shelf life and wholesalers want to come to you and purchase from you?
Sure. So definitely nitrogen, people need to be very careful of using nitrogen. The crop definitely needs nitrogen, but excessive nitrogen creates huge problems with quality, particularly the tuber quality, and also late application of nitrogen. We won't put any nitrogen after about week 6, week 7. So it's nitrogen, people have to be very careful of that. We've also got a big focus on calcium in the early stages of the crop, which creates better quality tubers. And then during the bulking stage, it needs a lot of potassium. So in the early stage of the crop, it's a nitrogen calcium focus. But as soon as the tuber bulking starts, we shift our focus onto potassium. So I think with farmers, particularly in Zimbabwe, it's always nitrogen. But with a crop like potatoes, it definitely affects the quality negatively if you over apply it.
Looking at fertilizer application, I understand that we have our traditional fertilizers, our granular fertilizers, and also we have essential nutrients that you've just highlighted. But then on the market, we are also having supplements, something like at times we have NutriBloom, at times we have some fertilizers which are coming in very, very small containers that you dilute within a knapsack or a boom sprayer. Can you advise our Zimbabwean farmers? Because there's a lot of misconceptions whereby farmers are saying at times, why do I need to purchase 50 kg, 50 kilogram bags of fertilizer? I can just use this 5 liter bottle. They are saying that is enough. Can you talk to our Zimbabwean farmers in terms of the use of our traditional fertilizers as well as the new technologies that are coming in, the supplements fertilizers, the foliar fertilizers, incorporating them together with our traditional fertilizers?
Sure, what's nice. So what we do here is we use both. So we use our basal blends. In the beginning, we use our standard calcium nitrate, potassium nitrate, SOP through the top dressings, but we also use a lot of foliars. We find at certain times of the crop, particularly when there's stress or at tuber bulking, it needs a quick, we call it direct injection. And that's where the foliar products can be very, very useful. But I don't think it's a case of being able to only use foliars. I think that would be very dangerous. But we use both, and I think there's definitely a place for both.
Okay. Barry, I understand that even though you have constructed your ridges, there is a period in time you're still gonna come in with a ridger. You're gonna have the exercise of re-ridging. What is the essence or the importance of re-ridging or earthing up some more when it comes to potato production? Because at times people will be saying, diesel is too expensive, I can't be coming back. But I know that when it comes to yields and quantities, there is a difference between a farmer who re-ridged and that one who just said the ridges are enough, it's sufficient as it is. Talk to us about the importance of earthing up, and during what periods would you say it is essential to come back again and re-ridge?
Sure. So we don't do it as standard practice, the re-ridging, but we do it a lot. Essentially, we have to have a ridge that's big enough to have space for the potatoes to grow. very similar to a fish in a pond. The bigger the pond, the bigger the fish can grow.
Yes.
So it's very important that that ridge is big enough. We target anything over sort of 55 we think is a good yield. But in order to get those big yields, the potatoes need space. So if that ridge is too small, it's a problem, and that's where you would need to get in with that re-ridger to build up the ridge. We try and do it as early as possible. If you let the crop get too big and then come in with the re-ridger, you get quite a bit of mechanical damage on the plants, and it's a sort of entry point for disease. But also if you do it at too late a stage, you can affect the roots,
Okay.
which you don't want either. So again, it's very much a balance of getting your timing right, and doing it if you need to.
Now this field is disease-free. I cannot notice or look at a leaf that I would say that there might be some blemishes or deformities on it, meaning that your preventative measures are spot on. Could you talk to us in terms of those chemicals or those measures or activities that you are doing here to ensure that your potato crop is well taken care of and you are preventing any insect pest infestation or any diseases? Because I understand that it is a lot quite difficult to be cleaning out a disease or insect infestation rather than just preventing it.
Sure, Wazna. So I think first and foremost, you've got to choose the right variety. There's some varieties which are a lot more prone to pests and diseases. And then also trying to balance your fertilizers very carefully. The moment you go and over-fertilize with anything, particularly nitrogen, your pests and diseases climb in very quickly. So we try and balance our nutrition as carefully as possible, and get the sugar levels in the leaf as high as we can, Brix levels. We find when our Brix levels are high, the pest and disease pressure is very low. But this potato crop's at week 10 now after emergence.
Okay.
And naturally at the end of the crop, the pressure for pests and particularly diseases, late blight, becomes very difficult.
Okay.
But we do have fungicides that we get from Nutrimaster, which are very effective. We spray a combination of contacts and systemics. So it's a big combination of things to try and keep the crop clean.
Okay, finally, as we close, Barry, you are a seasoned potato man. Talk to our Zimbabwean farmers. They might think that maybe there are some shortcuts or people are making a lot of money in potatoes, you don't have to do much. Or either some people do not even have the knowledge, just some prerequisites or your emphasis on certain things that someone who is looking to invest into potato production, your word of advice that you'd want to say. Because when people watch on TV and see this, they are not seeing this green leaf, they are seeing money. So in terms of just your word of advice, in terms of those that want to get into potato production, what should you want to say as your parting words as we close?
Well, it's now, potato production farming is very risky. We've grown some beautiful crops in the past where we've lost money.
Okay.
Because market prices have been very low.
Okay.
We've grown crops in the past where we've struggled with pests and diseases and we've yielded badly. It's not an easy crop to grow. And it's a very expensive crop to grow. It's got a lot of due diligence is needed to be done, right from soil sampling, right time of the year, choosing the right seed, managing it extremely carefully. It's a crop where you can lose a lot of money.
Okay.
So it's got to be taken very seriously. A lot of due diligence needs to be done. But if you do get it right, you can do well. But it's not a case of planting potatoes, I'm going to make a lot of money. It's definitely not. It's a difficult crop to make a profit on. It's got to be done perfectly.
Okay, thank you so much, Barry, for taking your time to come and educate farmers. At times, farmers do not just need advice from agronomists. They need also advice from practicing farmers, those who are in the industry, those who are facing challenges and how they are overcoming those challenges. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thanks, Wadzanai.
There you had it, viewers. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, seasoned potato farmers and aspiring potato farmers, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. We are coming to you from Shamba, a farm that is being owned by Betty Stewart. At this point in time, I've taken the liberty of inviting Angeline Mupinda, who is a crop protection expert working with Opticam and Nutrimaster. Angie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting us, Wadzanai.
Yes, there are diseases that are a menace in potato production, especially potato blight.
Yes.
Looking at both early blight and late blight.
Correct.
What are the curative measures or the preventative measures that you might want to highlight, or the chemicals that are used to control both?
Okay. Wadzanai, what we always advise farmers is to always have fungicides in place. When you think about growing your potato crop, you need to have some of these things in your warehouse ready. So as a preventative spray, we would suggest that farmers have their copper oxychloride in place, their mancozeb in place, and Bravo as well in place. And then once you start noticing these diseases, you then come in with curatives. We've got our Macomenta, which is our mancozeb plus metalaxyl in place. We've also got azoxystrobin, Optistrobi, which is azoxystrobin plus difenoconazole.
Okay, now Angie, at times Zimbabwean farmers do struggle with the potato tuber moth.
Correct.
What are maybe the environment that you would say it perpetuates the fact that then you have that moth within your field, and also the curative and the preventative measures that are there on the market that you would want to say, if a farmer recognizes that, what do you see to say that, hey, my field might be infested with the potato tuber moth? What do you normally see, and what are the measures or the chemicals that you use to defend or protect your field?
First of all, Wadzanai, potato tuber moth has become a problem for most potato growers. So when you get into your farm, you start seeing your plant dying. It will look like it's been scalded by hot water.
Oh.
And when you also ruffle the leaves, you see some white flies and moths coming up. Then you can say now at that time you actually have a problem.
Oh, okay.
So we would suggest that farmers use. So there's also resistance with using one product, so we would suggest that you rotate with a different number of chemicals. At Nutrimaster, we've got Ampligo. We've also got our Tutagard, which is your belt, your flibendimide, and we've also got Catep hydrochloride.
Okay.
Yes.
Finally, as we close this segment, Angie, this field is weed free.
Yes.
There are no weeds.
Yes.
The ridges, you can actually walk in
Yes.
between the ridges.
Yes.
There are no weeds in sight. I understand that weeds can also be a breeding ground where insects can hide, where pests can hide,
Yes.
then later on come and attack the leaves or even the potatoes themselves.
Correct.
Can you talk to us in terms of the herbicides that are used when it comes to potato production?
At Nutrimaster, we've got a S-metolachlor, which will do your grasses and your nut sedges, and we've also got metribuzin, which will do your broadleaf weeds. And those two products can actually be used in combination in a tank mix. Those are compatible products. They can actually be used at the same time.
Yes.
And then, as Barry had maize on this field, so what normally comes up later would be that a regrowth of maize. At that volunteer weeds that we've got. So we would then suggest you use a FOP. For that, we've got a fluazifop as well as propaquizofop, which is our slasher. The most important thing to note is that you actually have to use these products when the weed is actually actively growing, because it needs to be taken up so that it's actually taken up by the weeds, and then it kills the weeds.
Finally, as we close, Angie, just a snippet, a brief advice, your sentiments when it comes to potato production in Zimbabwe, aligning it to soil testing, soil analysis before a farmer invests in purchasing seed. I understand that potato seed is very expensive, but you wouldn't want to get into the field and doing guesswork.
Yes.
Let us speak about soil tests, soil analysis, aligning it to profitable potato production in a snippet.
Correct. At Nutrimaster, we actually think of the farmer. So we've actually built state-of-the-art lab where we can actually come to your farm and help you collect soil samples, and then we take them to our labs, and then we analyze that for you, and then we give you a recommendation. So that you put the adequate fertilizer, the adequate liming, the adequate gypsum, and all the stuff that you need.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angie, for taking your time off of your busy schedule and coming with us here in Shamba, where we're looking at profitable commercial potato production. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
On that note, viewers, we've come to the end of this week's edition. From me, your host, Wadzanai Manyora. I'm also on Instagram. It's at Wadzi110. And the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.